Welcome to Three, a part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm Gill Gross with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. The 2023 U.S. Open men's singles draw is out. Novak Djokovic, the number 2 seed, opposite Carlos Alcaraz. He looks to win his first U.S. Open since 2018. He comes fresh off of a win over Carlos Alcaraz in Cincinnati. And we are very excited, as always, to get into his draw, some of the other contenders. But I do want to start with the stat that I opened with, which is the 2018 thing. Novak has won, I think, 7, maybe 8 majors since his last U.S. Open. It's just been a rocky history, particularly in the last 5 years. And I think we should try to kind of dissect why or what it means. Absent last year, Medvedev final in 2021, going for the Grand Slam, very depleted by the time he arrived in the final. The fluke DQ in 2020, and retired against Wawrinka with a shoulder injury in 2019. I guess my question, I'll go to you, Joel. We know that Australian Open versus US Open, Novak has triple the titles at the Aussie than he does the US Open. But is he really 3 times as good in Australia, or is there some coincidence at play here?
Well, look, Australia, he arrives fresh. You can only imagine how rigorous he is in his off-season training methodology, and he's fresh and he's there. And it's also the happy slam, having been to them all. It's very relaxing in Australia. The gap between the city and the tournament is minimal. I mean, it'd be like as if you played the US Open in Central Park. And so it's all cozy and comfortable, and he has a lot of things down. And then, of course, success builds success. Now you come to the US Open at the end of a long year. All these recent ones we talked about, he turned 31 in 2018. So this is all Novak in his 30s after a long, hard year. And these are some strange occurrences too. An injury, a retirement, COVID, all these things, the slam effort. So it's a tough time of year for him because he's put in so much throughout the year.
We're being very kind of nitpicky. I mean, why has this guy only won 3 U.S. Opens? I mean, imagine, that standard applied to any other player. But there may be something with court speed. Who knows? The U.S. Open hard courts are slower than the Australian hard courts. And this year, I hear that they're after maybe playing a little bit faster, they're back to playing slower. Don't know if that's true or not. We'll see. There may be something with that, but it also could just be a little bit of bad luck.
Yeah, I think especially if you look at the recent events, it seems like bad luck. I've always thought that there is some of that at play, because I don't think it's really possible to be 10 titles good at Australian Open, 3 titles good at the US Open. I think that's too big a gap. Like, you just have some funky business, some luck at play there.
Well, yeah, Novak, young, good enough to reach the US Open final, who's 20, play Roger Federer. Old and good enough at 34 to play Medvedev in the 2021 final. So reaching the finals 14 years apart, I mean, some of this speaks to the way these 3 have kind of recalibrated the bar. I mean, in American baseball, hitting 500 home runs is a big deal. So for years, there was a tennis equivalent hitting 500 home runs. These guys have all made it seem like, no, the bar is 650 home runs, 700 home runs. And it's like, wow. So yeah, Novak, you're right. 3 are US Open. He's won the US Open 3 times. Yeah, and he's been the favorite in a zillion of them. In a zillion of these Opens, as he is one of the 2 favorites this year.
Yeah. I think the age thing is a good point, though. Think about Roger Federer. He wins 5 in a row in his prime, athletically, 20s, doesn't win anymore after the 5-er streak, which ended in 2009. So that's a good example right there. And we've seen your Dominic Thiem's of the world, your Carlos Alcaraz's of the world. They have broken through at the US Open. So
I think, though, I want to talk about something about the US Open here.
Yeah.
It used to be, in the days when the Australian Open wasn't as significant, even some years even finishing the year from 78 to 85, but 77 to 85. But the Australian Open wasn't that big at the start of the year. Not as many players played it. Its significance wasn't as big. That was even true to some degree for the French, or more importantly, the clay guys were putting their time with the French. Now we're in, I'd say, the last 20, 25 years, the 4-slam era. So in the prior era, the US Open was kind of like the big second one at the end of the year. Now it's the fourth one at the end of the year. So it's waiting. And I think we're going to, when we look back at the last 10 or 15 years, we see more one-offs at the US Open. Cilic, we've spoken about this before, Cilic, Del Potro, Stan Wawrinka. That used to not be the case. It used to be, if you won the US Open, you probably won a major somewhere else, because it wasn't a tournament for one-offs, for one slam guys. It was a tournament for, champions across. And so a lot changed. So if you look at the weighting scale of the tournaments of the majors, the Australian, the French have become so much more significant. And so that adds to the player mileage.
Yeah.
It is interesting too that Nadal stole a couple US Opens in the latter stages of his career. And again, that may have to do with court speed or favorable conditions for him. It also has to do with just what a great all-court, all-surface champion that he is.
It's funny with court speed, it has changed quite a bit. I remember reading Rafa's book, and which I think it was published around, I want to say 2010-ish. So honestly, it was very early for him to write a book.
Yeah.
And he just went for it. He was saying how quick the US Open is. It's the hardest. The ball just skids right through the court. But then come like 2017, I think through 2020, it was very slow. It became almost approaching Indian Wells slow. And then as you alluded to, Amy, I think 2021, 2022, it has been quick these last 2 years. Let's see what happens this year. It's sometimes that's quite a wild card. Let's talk about Novak's draw. Amy, what did you make of Djokovic's draw?
I call him like I see him, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought, and Joel had a really great quote, which I stole for another podcast, but I'm pretty sure I attribute it to him. And that is that Novak will have an easy draw for the rest of his life, just because look at the head-to-head Novak against pretty much everyone. That being said, on balance, I think his draw is a little bit easier than Alcaraz's. And simply because Alcaraz has a potential versus Sinner in the quarterfinals, and that's a tough matchup for him.
That's a great thought, and I hope you attributed that to me, Amy.
I'm pretty sure 99%.
There's a great line, and I won't even say who said it. It says that amateurs borrow and professionals steal. So it's all good. And that's okay. So the Novak and Carlos, obviously that's a ways down the road, but that's a final that obviously, particularly in the wake of Cincinnati and Wimbledon. Wow, what a great final that would be. The two key stats, should that happen, would be time on court, time finished on court. Who has more matches that end past midnight, and what's the physical toll, no matter who you are and how that works. And I suspect, okay, who do you think has more night matches scheduled, Alcaraz or Novak?
I'd say it's like a tie. No?
Yeah.
I say it might be a little more Carlos, maybe. But
well, I think also the teams can have some influence, and I'm wondering. I am actually curious. I just thought of this. I hadn't been thinking of it before. Based on what happened last year with Alcaraz, I do wonder if his team is going to ask for some day. Or
some first night. In other words, there's a lot of maneuvering around that about, okay, we'll play at night, but not the second match at night each time or whatever. Anyway, that's just kind of interesting jockeying around that. And there's also some stuff that we've heard from the WTA and other terms. There's things going on around scheduling as matches get longer, as sessions occur, as the post 11 p.m.ing of tennis, it's gonna hit more. Other stadiums, other court assignments, weather. Anyway, so yeah, we'll see. Getting back to Novak's draw, though, it's a good point about the head-to-heads and how
Djokovic's history and his level is going to make it so that we're more likely to look at a draw and say, well, this is in the bag. Because the head-to-head, for example, against Tsitsipas is 11-2, and it's a 10-match win streak for Novak. And against Fritz, it's 7-0. And those are his top two seeds. Those are his most likely on paper quarterfinals. And it's like, okay, well, that is amazing. That leads you to think that it's a great draw. At the same time, these are two top 10 players that have just been dominated by Novak. What does that tell you about Novak?
Tells you how great he is.
Yeah.
How great he is. And it tells you how these guys have, they're still in a very early formative stage of their career that may be this highest stage of their career. They don't know, it's like those two guys are both kind of interesting to see. Is Tsitsipas had kind of like beginner's luck when he got him in Canada a few years ago. And then since then, he's banged his head against this wall, including the Aussie final this year. Fritz has been making his way up, but these guys, let's hope they have a chance to play him more, that they're in the contention more to play him more, but we don't know about that either.
Well, Fritz just got destroyed by Novak, and Fritz had a good match against him in Australia. Of course, Novak had that tear, but Fritz has not been playing well. I mean, it's actually kind of a lucky draw for Novak, and that's okay because he deserves some luck.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know why sometimes fans get insecure about that. I mean, it's a good thing. You want your man to do well, so you should be hoping for a good draw. But I understand the dynamics around wanting to give the fullest credit at all times at the same time. I actually have Lorenzo Musetti as Djokovic's quarterfinal opponent. I do not have Fritz, okay. and I do not have Tsitsipas as Tsitsipas is going to go up against three bomber servers to open the tournament, and I think that's a weakness of his on a quick court. Mm-hmm. So I think Lorenzo finds his way through, who beat Novak the last time they played in Monte Carlo. Can we buy that?
That's really good analysis, Gill. I mean, I saw Tsitsipas's opening round match, and that might be an upset special. And you think his backhand will get some bombs served at it? I mean, he's either going to come through, and Tsitsipas is either going to come through, and that tool will have been sharpened, or he's not going to make it.
Yeah, and Milos Raonic played some good tennis earlier this month in his comeback. Played a great match against TFO, and so we'll see. Yeah, I think Novak, we look at intangibles like weather and duration of matches and no early set drops, so he doesn't have to then play a fourth set. Not that he's rickety. I mean, look, he just played a fantastic nearly 4-hour match in Cincinnati, but I think he wants to a lot of his game is built around energy conservation. It always has been.
Well, until Wimbledon, there had actually been a lot of injuries in his season, and he had been kind of winning in spite of them.
Right.
So I don't think it's wrong to think about limiting the time on court as an asset, given that. But I think he's in great position to do that. I don't know that much about Alexander Muller, who is his first round opponent. Zapata Miralles, more than likely his second round opponent, who is a very good grinder, but I don't think he scares Novak with any kind of weapons whatsoever. And then Laszlo Djere in the third round. They've actually had some battles in the past. They know each other extraordinarily well. That would be Serb versus Serb. And I have Mackie McDonald in the fourth round, but the seeds here would be FAA or Francisco Cerundolo. I just think it's very comfortable. And
FAA is not in form, and Cerundolo is an excellent player, but a slower court speed would definitely help him, but this isn't necessarily his surface.
But these are the players who can, these are fine, great world-class players, but they're not it's not like Khachanov or an informed Zverev, or, these players who can really push Novak more, they're not in that section. Those are the guys who can, big serves, big ground strokes.
And I think one of the big things with the draw is Zverev in particular, because he's the number 12 seed. And at this point, that's just an underseeding based on how the year went with his injury. So I feel like a lot of the luck of the draw was going to be somewhat about where he landed. And I mean, I think Jannik Sinner is the real victim here. Sinner Zverev is a potential fourth round. I do think there was some misrepresentations of Alcaraz's draw, because when you say, oh my God, he has Zverev and Sinner, it's like, no, he has one or the other.
Right.
Sinner might have Zverev and Alcaraz, or Zverev might have Sinner and Alcaraz. So I actually think that Carlitos's draw, while it's tougher than Novak's, there was some overinflation online about how bad it really was.
Well,
That's a good point.
That's why I don't talk to people online about evaluation. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, okay, overinflation by like who? The analysts at Merrill Lynch. I mean, it's like whatever.
But yeah, I'm telling you, a lot of prominent people in the sport, Joel, no anonymous. It's just when you list like who's in his quarter, it does look quite scary.
Yeah, but when you read the draw, this is the whole thing about this whole draw casting, and there might
Gill, since I'm in my car and I don't have my draw in front of me, who is near Carlitos? Who could he face?
Sure.
Early.
Or how early? Like third round, like first seed? His first seed would be Dan Evans, although I think Jordan Thompson has a chance to be there in round 3 instead of Evans. His fourth round would be Nori or Griegspoor. That's pretty nice for Alcaraz, I would say. In fact, yeah, I think that could go a lot of different ways. It's really the quarterfinal round where that bottom eighth in that quarter, that's really, really strong. You have Zverev, Sinner, Dimitrov, Echeverry, you have Stan Wawrinka, you have Lorenzo Sonego. I think that you have Vukic. I think that is really strong right over there, but that doesn't concern Alcaraz until the quarterfinal.
Well, in this case, the point
Jordan Thompson, sorry, Joel, Jordan Thompson did take a set off of him recently. That was a good match. As I recall, I didn't see the whole match, but I saw the highlights. He served and volleyed against him quite a bit. So, yeah, that's pesky. But yeah, you're right. Like, he can't face all the great players in a quarter.
That's exactly, you just echoed my point. Exactly, Amy. It's like he right. So people who are reading a draw that way don't know how to read a draw. Like they're not reading it. The straw is loaded. No, great. They're gonna good. Let those guys all knock each other before the quarters. That's why this draw casting stuff. Like, I mean, it's engaging in a way, and then it's just kind of silly because, for example, two of these guys might get injured before the tournament even starts, and now there's a lucky loser, and now somebody serves 50 aces, and now this guy's hot, and now he beats the seed, and he fills the seed's place, and all these tumbling things occur that make it. It's like but Alcaraz also his journey, besides some of these players in his section like Sinner and Sasha, his journey is going to be more fraught than Novak's because he's coming back to win a title. He's 20 years old. He's coming back to win a title he won as a teenager. It's all fresh and new, and that's kind of a whole thing where Novak is so experienced. That doesn't mean Novak is odds on to beat him when they get in the finals. It just means there's going to be a lot more factors on Carlos. That's why I asked the question. It's like, I think he's going to get more night assignments. We want to put you on at night. Give Novak that second afternoon. That's okay. That's
do you think
right.
Joel, do you think the Wimbledon final, or the Wimbledon title, I should say, helps Alcaraz mentally as he comes into the US Open when it comes to defending the title? Because I feel like if he were on one major and he was now defending that title, there would be a little bit more on his shoulders.
Because he only has, right, because, well, okay, I lost the US Open. I still got the Wimbledon. Absolutely, it helped because, and we know this, the second slam is harder to win than the third slam. The second slam is a more important validation than the third slam. The third slam, it's like, wow, now I'm really in the club. But the second slam, it's like, okay, got it. This is pretty good. I wasn't a one slam dude. So look at, and he's already gotten them. I mean, there are very few people who've won 2 slams by 20, and even fewer who've won 2 different slams by the time they're 20. That's pretty neat. So yeah, I think it's so much. I think he feels this guy takes in pressure as he's supposed to and lets it sit as it should, more than even the 3 did. More than even our 3 guys, Roger and Rafa and Novak did. They had more. Go on.
If I'm Carlitos, I'm playing very free right now because I know that the end is coming for Novak. And I've already beaten him on a couple of occasions. So worst case scenario, I just wait this guy out. And in a couple years, I start cleaning up on everything. I mean, nothing's guaranteed, but with the talent he has at his age, things are looking pretty good. But on the flip side, to counter my own argument, I was really surprised to see Alcaraz really break down in tears after losing to Novak in Cincinnati. It meant a lot to him. And I can start to see the pressure bubbling up for him. So I'm not sure how he'll play or how he'll handle the pressure of defending the title.
I think he should play. I think the way this guy's learned to play, he should play free. He doesn't have to outweight Novak. He just outplay him. He's proven that he can outplay the guy, and then it shows something about Novak. It's like, gee, I thought these guys, Roger and Rafa, retired. Can I have this thrown for a little bit? And now I got this other guy. I mean, it's like Novak. Where's my Nishikori? Where's my Nishikori? Where are my Mark Philippoussis? Where are these guys? I mean, Tsitsipas has kind of been like that too, like a near contender. Now I got a bona fide guy who beat him in a Wimbledon final. Boy.
Novak had a small window, and he missed a couple of majors during that window because of COVID and because of vaccine stuff. And then there was no Wimbledon in 2020. But I would say you're right, Joel, that I was talking about it on a mailbag recently. There was a slight window where you look at the major finals and there's Tsitsipas twice and there's Medvedev, but yeah, now a lot of the times it's likely to be Alcaraz from here on out. Can we talk about everybody else though? Like you have Djokovic, Alcaraz, tier 1 on opposite sides of the draw. What's the next group? How large is the next group? And how close are they, Amy?
Small, non-existent. Only because, okay, Sinner is legit. You know, he's a level down, but I'm not sure that Sinner has like the killer mentality just based on some of the quotes. And this is really like me being the psychiatrist or whatever, which is bad. But it's interesting that Sinner has said things like, it's okay to lose as long as you lose in the right way. And that may be true, but it's not a champion's mentality, I don't sense. Or he had made a comment about how Federer seemed to have this wonderful work-life balance. But as someone pointed out, it might have been Lubicic or somebody like that Federer didn't have that early on. He only attained that balance later after he had won a dozen championships, majors. So I'm not sure about Sinner, but he would be my next. Rune, apparently, who would be possibly in that group because he has beaten Novak. Rune apparently is suffering from a pretty significant back injury. Tsitsipas is having his summer of love. You know, he's just not consistent right now. You know, I picked to go to the Final Four Tommy Paul because I like the way he's playing right now, but I'm taking a bit of a flyer on him.
I picked him too.
Me too.
Oh,
Me too.
Wow.
Well, and viewers, we did not discuss this. We did not.
See, I think as far as the contenders, I think these guys have to considerable refinement. I'm still holding because I'm still holding some hope for Zverev on the recovery and get in the mix front. But obviously, none of these guys have accomplished as much as Carlos. However, they can do some of Novak's work for him if they can deplete Carlos in the way that some people used to do that to Novak. I remember the year Murray won Wimbledon, Novak had a very rough 5-set semi with Del Potro. So that aided, I think, Murray's cause. But I think these other guys, I think all the ones that have been mentioned, they haven't had enough results yet. Rune, we hold hope for, but now he's got an injury. So for this year, it's not quite clear. But in the time to come, we're just gonna have to see. I mean, I think what you're opining that perhaps Sinner was making kind of like extrication quotes, like, see, maybe I don't want that bit. But though, to me, reminds me of something. During some of those years when Federer went a few years without winning a major, someone would say to me, well, Federer said so-and-so. Yeah, he said it. I mean, I think words just fly out the window with athletes. That's why
That's a good point.
It's not politics. It's like Sinner. So, but we're going to see more like with Sinner. Like I was a little bit, even though it seems so obvious these days. So Sinner wins a Masters 1000 and he loses his opening next match. It's like, gee, golly, that's how it kind of goes sometimes. It's not,
I mean, when everyone who wins Canada has been doing that, but the thing is, the players who have been winning Canada have been not regular Masters 1000 champions. They, this didn't happen to Big Three when they won Canada, but it's been happening a lot. The Sinner thing in terms of complacency, or I don't know if that's the right word or not, but being content with where you're at. It's something I do look for in players, and I think it's a big deal who has it, who doesn't. One thing that would be points in his corner is how he's been with his team. Like he fired Piatti, his like childhood coach, after he lost to Tsitsipas at the Australian Open, because he was just like, this is unacceptable. I need to do better. So I think that's a good sign. And I think, by the way, Daniil Medvedev's name should be mentioned. He's my number 3, not Sinner, but it's very close between them. Obviously, the 2021 champion hasn't had a very convincing summer. I do think there are some bad matchups for him in the draw, people who come to net a lot. But if he starts to play his best on a hard court, we know that that's close to a tier 1 level.
Oh, he's great. But Alcaraz has kind of authored the book for all on Medvedev, and he's executed at the best level because he's so good. See, here's how you make bad math for this guy. Look at me, kick serves, volley. I mean, Alcaraz has just kind of obliterated Medvedev this year, and then it's shown a lot of people, and that's probably sent a jolt to Medvedev. I mean, that's just kind of interesting. I think at that very high level, that your aura, your sense of it, and then you're like the young thing. Medvedev isn't that old, and here comes this Carlos who's just kind of like, obliterating you like he did in Indian Wells and Wimbledon. So, but Medvedev, he's great. And again, draws, someone else doing the knockout work for you, right? That's the fun about draws, that someone else does the work. Let the guy hit, let this other guy serve 60 aces and beat this guy. Now I can play him.
Medvedev has had a subpar run-up, especially for his favorite surfaces. But I also think that can't last for long. So I have picked him to do well, and I'm always interested to see if Medvedev is interested in improving his game, tweaking that return position, trying different things, and of course approaching the net and see what he's doing there.
I believe though we have Tommy Paul was in the same quarter as Medvedev, or did I miss something?
No. Paul is with Ruud and Rune.
So we picked Paul to emerge. We all 3 independently picked Paul to emerge from that quarter.
Which, right? By the way, it makes me very nervous because these trendy picks that you kind of feel like they're bold, but I feel like people who are locked in are kind of thinking the same way. I just have a bad feeling about those. Those never happen.
It's funny, and guys know how I feel about picks. So last year, I was doing picks for tennis.com, and as you know, I tend to pretty much play it. I kind of play it down the middle when I make picks. I said, convention would favor. In fact, say you're Medvedev, but I'm going to say it's going to be Taylor Fritz is going to win the U.S. Open this year. That was last year, and he lost in the first round. Is this a pick? Whatever, it's okay.
I had Fritz in the semis last year. That's what I'm saying. It's very worrisome.
We didn't speak. What did you have, Amy? Did you have Fritz in the finals? Do you remember?
No, I didn't. I think I did pretty well. the thing, well, actually, I'm not going to tell you guys my technique, but I do have kind of, well, I'm not going to tell you how I pick these things because as you know, I don't like it. I don't enjoy doing it. I don't like to be wrong. But I do what you're saying, Gill, like you never know when to take the flyer or when to pick the trendy pick. I do have a certain mentality, and a lot of it, I will tell you this, a lot of it revolves around you don't overthink. Like I picked Novak to win the tournament. Not overthinking. I picked Alcaraz to make the final. It's not a super out there pick. I'm not going out on a limb, but these guys have clearly established that they're the two best in the world right now.
Oh no, I think anyone would say that you would do the classic thing and say take those two and then take the field if you're doing it that way. But that whole world, it's like this stuff. I'm not learning anything. That's the thing I have with this stuff. That's kind of I think understanding why and how is kind of interesting. And when we give the nuanced look at these contenders and their games and how they're playing, like that Sinner would then win Canada and then right away lose in Cincinnati. Did he make those comments after the loss in Cincinnati?
One of the comments about, work-life balance, that's, 9, 10, 11 months old. The other comment is more recent. But one thing I wanted to say about picks is I want our viewers and fans to understand that these are human beings, okay? Medvedev, for example, is a new dad. There's geopolitics involving his country. There may be something going on in his life that we as outsiders, because that's what we really are, we have no idea about. And you have to remember that these are human beings. So if the draws don't play out the way you thought, or why didn't this person play the way that he always played, you do have to remember that these are humans.
Well, that's right. That's why when it comes, that's like I don't want to always treat athletes like they're commodities. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. The best sports bettors in the world are right about 55% of the time. If you do research on that game and how it's played, that's what you'll find. 55% is an incredible percentage that the best of the best can achieve. Let's bring it back to Novak. Cincinnati was such a sharp display of tennis. Every match was easy until the Alcaraz match, and then he suffered a heat stroke for a set and a half and still won. But is there something about his game that you'll be keeping an eye on in the first 3 rounds? Is there something to watch, an X factor where you'll be taking note? Okay, where's Novak at here?
I'll be watching for time on court and efficiency and what he's doing with his second serve.
Yeah, I was thinking of serves. So I'm thinking, it's funny, you said second serve. I thought first serves in, lots of first serves in, and then maybe a tab on coming to net, the investment play.
Yeah, I think for me, first serve forehand, just how much is that first strike stuff firing? I think when it comes down to it, that's going to get it done against Alcaraz. You need a lot of really good spot serves and great forehands behind it. So that's what I'll be looking for. And we will all be in New York, which means probably no show until the semis when I get back. I know that I probably won't be able to do a show. So, there's going to be a lot built up. We will, as always, watch and take mental notes about everything we can talk about when we get back together next, right? That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. We appreciate it if you leave a rating and a review on Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.